Chapter 11 of The Haunted Bookshop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Haunted Bookshop by Christopher Morley. Chapter 11. Titania Tries Reading in Bed. Aubrey, sitting at his window with the opera glasses, soon realized that he was blind weary. Even the exalted heroics of romance are not proof against fatigue, most potent enemy of all who do and dream. He had had a long day, coming after the skull-smiting of the night before. It was only the frosty air at the lifted sash that kept him at all awake. He had fallen into a half-drowse when he heard footsteps coming down the opposite side of the street. He had forced himself awake several times before to watch the passage of some harmless strollers through the innocent blackness of the Brooklyn night, but this time it was what he sought. The man stepped stealthily, with a certain blend of wariness and assurance. He halted under the lamp by the bookshop door, and the glasses gave him enlarged to Aubrey's eye. It was Weintraub, the druggist. The front of the bookshop was now entirely dark, save for a curious little glimmer down below the pavement level. This puzzled Aubrey, but he focused his glasses on the door of the shop. He saw Weintraub pull a key out of his pocket, insert it very carefully in the lock, and open the door stealthily. Leaving the door ajar behind him, the druggist slipped into the shop. "What the devil's business is this?" thought Aubrey angrily. "The swine has even got a key of his own. There's no doubt about it. He and Mifflin are working together on this job." For a moment he was uncertain what to do. Should he run downstairs and across the street? Then, as he hesitated, he saw a pale beam of light over the front left-hand corner of the shop. Through the glasses he could see the yellow circle of a flashlight splotched upon dim shelves of books. He saw Weintraub pull a volume out of the case, and the light vanished. Another instant, and the man reappeared in the doorway, closed the door behind him with a gesture of careful silence, and was off up the street, quietly and swiftly. It was all over in a minute. 2 yellow oblongs shone for a minute or two down in the area underneath the door. Through the glasses he now made out these patches as the cellar windows. Then they disappeared also, and all was placid gloom. In the quivering light of the street lamps he could see the bookseller's sign gleaming whitely, with its lettering, "This shop is haunted." Aubrey sat back in his chair. "Well," he said to himself, "that guy certainly gave his shop the right name. This is by me. I do believe it's only some book-stealing game after all. I wonder if he and Weintraub go in for some first edition faking, or some such stunt as that. I'd give a lot to know what it's all about." He stayed by the window on the qui-vive, but no sound broke the stillness of Gissing Street. In the distance he could hear the occasional rumble of the elevated trains rasping round the curve on Wordsworth Avenue. He wondered whether he ought to go over and break into the shop to see if all was well. But, like every healthy young man, he had a horror of appearing absurd. Little by little weariness numbed his apprehensions. 2 o'clock clanged and echoed from distant steeples. He threw off his clothes and crawled into bed. It was 10 o'clock on Sunday morning when he awoke. A broad swath of sunlight cut the room in half. The white muslin curtain at the window rippled outward like a flag. Aubrey exclaimed when he saw his watch. He had a sudden feeling of having been false to his trust. What had been happening across the way? He gazed out at the bookshop. Gissing Street was bright and demure in the crisp quietness of the forenoon. Mifflin's house showed no sign of life. It was as he had last seen it, save that broad green shades had been drawn down inside the big front windows, making it impossible to look through into the book-filled alcoves. Aubrey put on his overcoat in lieu of a dressing-gown and went in search of a bathtub. He found the bathroom on his floor locked, with sounds of leisurely splashing within. "Damn Mrs. J. F. Smith," he said. He was about to descend to the story below, bashfully conscious of bare feet and pyjamaed shins, but looking over the banisters he saw Mrs. Schiller and the treasure dog engaged in some household maneuvers. The pug caught sight of his pyjama legs and began to yap. Aubrey retreated in the irritation of a man balked of a cold tub. He shaved and dressed rapidly. On his way downstairs he met Mrs. Schiller. He thought her gaze was disapproving. "A gentleman called to see you last night, sir," she said. "He said he was very sorry to miss you." "I was rather late getting in," said Aubrey. "Did he leave his name?" "No, he said he'd see you some other time. He woke the whole house by falling downstairs," she said sourly. He left the lodging-house swiftly, fearing to be seen from the bookshop. He was very eager to learn if everything was all right, but he did not want the Mifflins to know he was lodging just opposite. Hastening diagonally across the street, he found that the Milwaukee Lunch, where he had eaten the night before, was open. He went in and had breakfast, rejoicing in grapefruit, ham and eggs, coffee, and doughnuts. He lit a pipe and sat by the window, wondering what to do next. "It's damn perplexing," he said to himself. "I stand to lose either way. If I don't do anything, something may happen to the girl. If I butt in too soon, I'll get in Dutch with her. I wish I knew what Weintraub and that chef are up to." The lunchroom was practically empty, and in two chairs near him the proprietor and his assistant were sitting talking. Aubrey was suddenly struck by what they said. "Say, this here, now, bookseller guy must have struck it rich." "Who, Mifflin?" "Yeah, did you see that car in front of his place this morning?" "No." "Believe me, some boat." "Must have hired it, hey? Where'd he go at?" "I didn't see. I just saw the bus standing front the door." "Say, did you see that swell dame he's got clerking for him?" "I sure did." "What's he doing, taking her joy-riding?" "Shouldn't wonder." "I wouldn't blame him." Aubrey gave no sign of having heard, but got up and left the lunchroom. Had the girl been kidnapped while he overslept? He burned with shame to think what a pitiful failure his knight-errantry had been. His first idea was to beard Weintraub and compel him to explain his connection with the bookshop. His next thought was to call up Mr. Chapman and warn him of what had been going on. Then he decided it would be futile to do either of these before he really knew what had happened. He determined to get into the bookshop itself and burst open its sinister secret. He walked hurriedly round to the rear alley and surveyed the domestic apartments of the shop. Two windows in the second story stood slightly open, but he could discern no signs of life. The back gate was still unlocked, and he walked boldly into the yard. The little enclosure was serene in the pale winter sunlight. Along one fence ran a line of bushes and perennials, their roots wrapped in straw. The grass plot was lumpy, the sod withered to a tawny yellow and granulated with a sprinkle of frost. Below the kitchen door, which stood at the head of a flight of steps, was a little grape arbor with a rustic bench where Roger used to smoke his pipe on summer evenings. At the back of this arbor was the cellar door. Aubrey tried it and found it locked. He was in no mood to stick at trifles. He was determined to unriddle the mystery of the bookshop. At the right of the door was a low window, level with the brick pavement. Through the dusty pane he could see it was fastened only by a hook on the inside. He thrust his heel through the pane. As the glass tinkled onto the cellar floor, he heard a low growl. He unhooked the catch, lifted the frame of the broken window, and looked in. There was Bock, with head quizzically tilted, uttering a rumbling guttural vibration that seemed to proceed automatically from his interior. Aubrey was a little dashed, but he said cheerily, "Hullo, Bock. Good old man. Well, well, nice old fellow." To his surprise, Bock recognized him as a friend and wagged his tail slightly, but still continued to growl. "I wish dogs weren't such sticklers for form," thought Aubrey. "Now, if I went in by the front door, Bock wouldn't say anything. It's just because he sees me coming in this way that he's annoyed. Well, I'll have to take a chance." He thrust his legs in through the window, carefully holding up the sash with its jagged triangles of glass. It will never be known how severely Bock was tempted by the extremities thus exposed to him, but he was an old dog, and his martial instincts had been undermined by years of kindness. Moreover, he remembered Aubrey perfectly well, and the smell of his trousers did not seem at all hostile. So he contented himself with a small grumbling of protest. He was an Irish terrier, but there was nothing Sinn Fein about him. Aubrey dropped to the floor and patted the dog, thanking his good fortune. He glanced about the cellar as though expecting to find some lurking horror. Nothing more appalling than several cases of beer bottles met his eyes. He started quietly to go up the cellar stairs, and Bock, evidently consumed with legitimate curiosity, kept at his heels. "Look here," thought Aubrey, "I don't want the dog following me all through the house. If I touch anything, he'll probably take a hunk out of my shin." He unlocked the door into the yard, and Bock, obeying the Irish terrier's natural impulse to get into the open air, ran outside. Aubrey quickly closed the door again. Bock's face appeared at the broken window, looking in with so quaint an expression of indignant surprise that Aubrey almost laughed. "There, old man," he said, "it's all right. I'm just going to look around a bit." He ascended the stairs on tiptoe and found himself in the kitchen. All was quiet.